I've never liked weddings, not because I don't believe in love, there was a time I gave my whole heart to it, but weddings are where the polished surface easily slips away, revealing who people really are, especially when you're not the bride. That afternoon, the California sun was soft, casting a golden glow over everything from the satin curtains to the pale cream flower arch. Inside the elegant grounds of a Napa resort, everything was styled in classic taste. White silk-covered chairs, vanilla-scented candles, and champagne glasses lined up neatly along the banquet table. My husband, Ethan, was busy adjusting his pale pink silk tie, the one he chose to match the theme of this prestigious family wedding. I stood beside him, holding our 8-month-old daughter Mia on my hip. Her cheeks were rosy in the sunlight, completely unaware that her mother was quietly battling the feeling of being suffocated with every passing minute. I didn't want to come. Mia was teething, crying every night, and I hadn't really slept in almost 3 weeks. But Ethan was firm. "This is Mason's wedding, my little brother. Don't mess this up. Try to look decent." So I put on the wine-colored dress he picked out, did my makeup in the car, and wore a smile I had practiced so much in front of the mirror that my face barely registered it anymore. We sat near the front, just behind the bride and groom. Ethan looked so proud, his eyes lighting up every time Mason turned around. As for me, I gently cradled Mia to sleep in my arms, swaying her softly, careful not to disturb anyone. I reached for Ethan's hand. The second my fingers touched him, he flinched and pulled away. Then he leaned in, his voice low but sharp. "Please don't embarrass me. Today, you're just the babysitter. Look good, stay quiet, and don't draw attention." I heard every word like it was etched into my spine. A part of me cracked, not from surprise, but from how far it had all gone. I let out a faint laugh, a reflex to cover the pain splintering inside. I looked around at the other women, wives smiling in their elegant dresses. I wondered if they'd ever heard words like that. Had they ever been treated like shadows next to their men, there to enhance their image, bear children, care for them, then fade into silence? I didn't cry. Not then. I just held Mia tighter, like she was the only thing keeping me from disappearing completely. The clinking of champagne glasses brought me back. My mother-in-law stood to speak, sharing childhood stories of Ethan and Mason, her voice full of emotion. Then came my father-in-law with outdated jokes that earned polite chuckles. Ethan straightened up, ready to give his speech. I could already guess what he'd say. Family values, love, responsibility, a flawless picture, as if this family had never abandoned or hurt anyone. And me? I just sat there, silent, the skin under my makeup itching from the sun, an invisible pressure. Applause followed Ethan's speech, echoing across the white-draped, warmly lit space. He returned to his seat with a half-smile, barely brushing my shoulder before pulling away again like he'd been shocked. I turned my face slightly, trying to control my breath as the mic came back on. This time, it was Mason. "Does anyone want to share something, a few words from family or friends?" No one stood up. No hands were raised. I exhaled in relief. Until Mason looked toward us and smiled. "Sophia, sis-in-law, care to say a few words? You're part of the family now, after all." I froze. Ethan whipped his head toward me, his face pale, eyes sharp with warning. "Don't say anything," he muttered, voice low and cold. "This isn't your moment." My heart thumped loudly in my chest. Mia stirred in my arms, her little head resting on my shoulder, uncannily anchoring me in place. I handed her to Ethan's cousin seated next to us and stood up. The mic was placed in my hand, cool, unfamiliar. My hand trembled, but I didn't look back. I stepped to the center of the small stage, every eye turning toward me. No music played. No voice in my head warned me. Just one sentence, looping endlessly. "Today, you're just the babysitter. Look good, stay quiet." I took a deep breath. "Thank you for letting me speak." My voice wavered at first, but I heard it clearly in the silence, so I went on. "I didn't plan to say anything, but some things need to be said so no one else has to carry the weight of silence I've carried." Whispers rippled through the crowd. I saw my mother-in-law squint, Ethan leaning forward as if to stop me. But I didn't pause. I remember my own wedding, 6 years ago. A day like this with wine, flowers, and vows spoken in glowing light. I believed I had found someone who saw me, not just as a wife but as a partner, a whole person. I looked at Ethan, he wasn't smiling. He didn't blink. He didn't deny it. But then there are days when you wake up and realize you've become a shadow. A shadow who folds napkins, changes diapers, cooks meals on time, smiles just enough to keep up appearances, but no longer remembers who she is. I heard the soft clink of glasses, utensils paused mid-air, some guests glanced at each other awkwardly. Ethan sat like stone, jaw tight. I'm not saying this to complain. I'm saying it because someone here has looked in a foggy mirror and no longer recognized who was looking back. I forgot my own laugh. I forgot what it felt like to have someone hold my hand, not out of politeness, but because they truly needed me. I looked over at Mason and his new wife. Mason, I hope you and Emily always see each other, not through wedding photos or resumes, but truly see one another, through the tired days, the arguments, the moments words fail. Because when people stop seeing each other, marriage stops being a home. It becomes a stage. I handed the mic back to the host and bowed. My legs trembled as I walked back to my seat, but I kept going, not once looking back. Ethan didn't get up, didn't ask, didn't speak. As I bent to pick up Mia, he just glanced sideways, his look cold and suspicious. I carried my daughter outside, through the main doors, out to the empty courtyard behind the reception hall. The sun was setting and the breeze brought a soft scent of jasmine. I held Mia close to my chest, closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time whispered, not to her but to myself, I'm still here, and I'm not invisible. I stepped through the iron gates of the wedding venue, the cool afternoon wind brushing my shoulders like it was trying to soothe what still trembled inside my chest. Mia slept soundly in my arms, her breath steady and sweet. I sat on a wooden bench beside the wisteria, listening quietly to birdsong mixed with faint music from the party. I don't know how long I sat there until I heard familiar footsteps. Ethan appeared, closing the iron gate behind him as he walked over. His voice lowered, but the anger still simmered. What's wrong with you, Sophia? I didn't answer. He stood in front of me, hands on hips, his tall frame blocking the last light of the day. You just embarrassed my whole family, do you know that? Everyone's talking. My mom had to cover for you, saying you were dealing with postpartum stress. I gently laid Mia in her stroller, not looking at him, just quietly pulling the light blanket over her. I didn't say anything untrue, Ethan. Not true, he scoffed, voice icy. You got up there like I'm some controlling monster, like you're some poor victim trapped at home. Do you have any idea how badly you just ruined my image in front of all those guests? I turned to him, my gaze steady for the first time. It is the truth, and if the truth embarrasses you, maybe you should ask yourself why. Ethan froze for a few seconds, then snapped. You're making a fool of yourself, and don't forget who you depend on. The house, the car, who's paying for all that? That sentence hit like a cold slap to the heart. Not because he hadn't mentioned money before, but because of the way he said it, as if I were some item he was maintaining, not a partner building a life with him. I took half a step back, speaking slowly. I know. I've let myself fade into the background for too long, but tonight I remembered something. I used to be someone, before I became your shadow. Ethan frowned, stepping closer. You're saying dangerous things, Sophia. I didn't wait to hear more. I pushed the stroller forward, walking straight toward the parking lot, leaving the sound of his footsteps frozen on the stone patio behind me. He didn't follow, didn't call my name, didn't apologize. And that silence was the loudest warning of all. When we got home, I laid Mia in her crib, closed her bedroom door, and stepped into the bathroom. The woman staring back from the mirror looked different. Dark circles under her eyes, hair a little messy, smudged lipstick, but her gaze was sharper than ever. I stared at that reflection, trying to reconnect with the person I used to be. That whole night, Ethan didn't mention the wedding. He climbed into bed, scrolled on his phone, and turned his back to me like everything was perfectly normal. I sat by the window, holding a glass of water gone cold, and in that silence, I realized. He had heard everything I said today. He just chose not to listen. The next morning, Ethan was up early like always. Coffee, news, watch. I'm heading to the office. My mom's coming by later. Don't make a scene, okay? I didn't answer, just gave a faint nod and shut the kitchen door behind him. After Mia went down for her nap, I sat at the dining table with an old notebook and a nearly dried out pen. Not to journal, just to make a list. Balance in my personal account, what's left after maternity leave. Info on old design projects I did before quitting. Email contacts from college. Rent for a 1-bedroom near the community clinic. Local support groups for single moms. Each line I wrote, my hand grew steadier. Each bullet point felt like a step forward. Part of me didn't want to admit I was thinking about leaving. But the other part knew, if I didn't start now, I'd lose the last of myself. I started with something small, opening the old laptop that had sat in the closet for almost a year. The last time I used it, I was 7 months pregnant with Mia. When Ethan told me I should fully rest and that design work is frivolous if your husband makes enough money. And back then I believed him. I believed I should give up work and pour myself into being a full-time wife and mother. But now, as the screen lit up and my old design software icon appeared, I realized I'd let someone dim the brightest part of me. I logged into my old work email, scrolling through past contacts. There were a few small jobs I'd done. Packaging for a local coffee shop, a vegan bakery, a yoga center. I jotted down each contact, every payment detail, like I was relearning how to live independently. That night, after Mia was asleep, I quietly opened a new online bank account. I picked the username Blue Nest, a name that reminded me of the home I would build for us on my own terms. The account had $0, but to me, it symbolized something far more valuable, a fresh start. A week later, I got an email from an old client named Veronica, the owner of that vegan bakery from back then. Sophia, do you still take freelance work? I need a full redesign for all my product packaging. Deadline's tight, but I'll pay 50% upfront. I nearly cried when I read 50% upfront, $260, enough to cover Mia's formula for the whole month. I worked every night in the little kitchen corner, sipping cold tea under the soft glow of an old desk lamp. I designed raisin bread labels, sketched oat cookie boxes, adjusted color palettes and fonts, like I'd never been forgotten. One quiet Sunday afternoon, while Mia napped and Ethan was meeting a client, I got a message from Lauren, an old college friend, the top student in our class and someone who always stayed in touch. Lauren, Sophia, just saw your name on some vegan bread packaging at the store near me. Are you back doing design? Me, yeah, just dipping my toes back in, a few small projects. Lauren, that's awesome. My company's hiring freelance web designers and they support moms with young kids. Want me to refer you? I sat still for a moment, phone in hand, heart racing. Me, I'm not sure I'm good enough anymore. Lauren, don't be silly. You used to blow the whole class away. But if you're serious about coming back, make a plan. And if you need help, I've got you. I stared at that message all night. Ethan had no idea. I said nothing. Still cooked dinner, still cleaned the kitchen, still nodded when he complained that Mia cried too much. But when night fell and the house was quiet, I opened my laptop and rewrote my resume. I uploaded my old projects to Behance, updated my profile, and clearly noted my ability to work remotely with a flexible schedule, ideal for a stay-at-home mom. The next morning, Lauren sent me an email titled, "Sophia, opportunity is waiting. This is the first step." I clicked the link. Her company, which supports nonprofit organizations, was looking to redesign the entire website for a community education campaign. Deadline 4 weeks. Compensation $1,400, 0 cents. I spent the whole morning hesitating, but in the end, when I looked at Mia sleeping, her tiny hand wrapped tightly around my finger like the last thread tying me back to myself, I hit submit. 3 days later, I got a reply. A Zoom interview was scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m. I planned to ask my kind neighbor to help watch Mia. She'd once said, "If you ever need anything, just knock." The night before the interview, I chose the simplest white blouse I had, ironed it neatly, and buttoned it all the way up. No fancy makeup, just a little tinted balm. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw a woman who had once broken, but was standing again, one step at a time. Behind me, the kitchen was still and silent. Ethan hadn't even noticed what I was doing, and maybe that was the clearest reason why I couldn't stay. I had begun stepping out of the shadows, and I knew there was no going back. The interview went smoother than I expected. I was still trembling when I turned off the camera. The interviewer, a woman named Jenna, smiled warmly and asked about my design style, how I managed deadlines, and how I balanced work with a young child. I didn't hide anything. I told the truth, that I had left the field for family reasons, that I was starting over from almost zero. She nodded and said, "We're looking for someone who understands persistence more than perfection, and I think you're that person." That evening I cooked dinner as usual, still lightheaded from the feeling of touching something I'd thought I'd lost. Ethan came home later than usual, smelling faintly of unfamiliar cologne, his eyes scanning me. "What did you do today?" he asked casually, but his eyes were sharp. "Stayed home, took care of Mia," I said without blinking. "Just stayed home? Where do you think I went?" He said nothing, just nodded and walked into his office. But when I walked past his door with the laundry basket, I heard a faint click. The sound of him opening the laptop I normally used. A chill ran through me. That night I checked my phone and found a strange app running in the background. Family Safe Pro. I hadn't installed it, I was sure. The app had access to my location, messages, even the microphone. I deleted it immediately, then checked the laptop. The browser history had been wiped clean. Every design file in my folder labeled work_2023 was gone. I couldn't breathe. Ethan didn't yell or slam doors, but the way he silently invaded my world, deleted my data, tracked me, it made my skin crawl. The next morning my mom called. Her voice was calm but cautious. "Sophia, Ethan called me yesterday." I said nothing. "He said you've been off, tired, depressed, talking to yourself, neglecting Mia. He says you're overworking and won't rest." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, listen to me. I'm completely fine, you know me." "I know, but you need to be careful. If he starts saying these things to others, you need to have proof, just in case things get worse." I put the phone down, my body cold. Ethan didn't just want to track me. He wanted to make my words sound irrational, to plant doubt. If I spoke up, people might think I was unstable. This was his way of preparing, crafting a Sophia's losing it narrative. That night, after Mia fell asleep, I began gathering evidence. I printed bank statements from my personal account, saved screenshots of emails with clients and photos of design work I had submitted. I took screenshots of messages with Lauren, payment receipts, everything. I created a USB folder called BlueNest_backup, then hid it beneath the detergent in the laundry room. I stashed a second copy inside a Ziploc bag tucked into the vegetable bin in the fridge. Next, I started researching temporary housing options for single moms. There was a support center just 20 minutes away. I sent a message. "I have a young child. I'm not being physically hurt, but I feel controlled. Can I get counseling?" They replied within the hour. "Of course. You don't have to be hurt to need support. When you're ready, we're here." I bought an old phone at a local electronics store, paid in cash. I used it only to contact the shelter and receive work emails. I set a unique password and hid it beneath towels in a drawer. I slowly started cleaning out the closet, selling old clothes, hiding the cash in a small locked box tucked into Mia's stroller. I packed an extra water bottle, spare diapers, instant snacks, and a few baby outfits into a small travel bag. One evening, as I passed Ethan's office, he looked up. "You've been going out a lot lately." "Walks, groceries, letting Mia get some fresh air." He didn't say anything, but his eyes didn't leave me. I knew he suspected something, and I also knew I didn't have much time left. That night I lay in bed with my eyes wide open. Beside me, Ethan slept peacefully. His arm rested on his own pillow, not touching mine. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock clearly. And in each tick, I planned my exit not in words, but in action. No panic, no explosions, just quiet steps out of a gilded cage. That final night arrived more quietly than I'd imagined. No arguments, no warning signs. Ethan had dinner, turned on the TV, even asked, "Want me to bring lunch home tomorrow?" I smiled softly, nodded, and said, "Whatever you like." But inside everything was already in place. At 2:37 a.m., I quietly slipped out of bed. Ethan was on his side, snoring lightly, breathing steady. I grabbed my phone and opened the preset alarm app. A map to the Women's Support Center about a 50-minute drive away. I walked to Mia's crib. She was still sound asleep, her tiny hand loosely gripping the blanket's edge. I leaned down, kissed her forehead, and wrapped her in the soft fleece blanket I'd packed earlier. No need to turn on the light. I'd walked this path in the dark 100 times. The bag was ready. ID documents, Mia's immunization records, clothes for 3 days, a bit of cash, a bank card, and the USB with all my work files. I carried everything downstairs, silent as a shadow. At 3:58 a.m. I opened the back door. It didn't creak, I had oiled the hinges last week. The cool night breeze swept in, carrying the scent of oak from the small backyard. I stepped out, holding Mia close, and locked the door behind me. Not a sound. As the engine started, I felt my heartbeat sync with its hum. The map lit up with clear directions. Street lights slid across the windshield like calm breaths, carrying me farther away from the house that turned me into a shadow. By the time I turned onto the gravel road leading to the shelter, the sky had started to soften. A pink-orange strip peeked over the horizon, hinting at a new dawn, not another day of silent breakfasts and suspicious stares. A woman stood waiting at the gate, about 50, with silvering hair but bright, kind eyes. Her name tag read, "Martha, Intake Coordinator." "Are you Sophia?" I nodded, nearly breaking down just hearing someone say my name without a command attached to it. "We've been expecting you, come in, this place is safe." I followed her into the main building. The lights in the lobby were soft, the walls painted in gentle pastels, and everything was quiet in the most comforting way. Not the tense silence I had lived in, but a purposeful stillness. One that allowed space to finally hear yourself. Martha led me to a small room on the second floor. There was a twin bed, a baby crib, and a window that opened to a lavender garden. "Rest. When you're ready, we can help you plan your next steps." I placed Mia in the crib. She was still asleep, her cheeks rosy, lips slightly parted as if dreaming of something peaceful. I pulled the sheer curtain, then sat down on the bed. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not out of fear, but because I knew this time I had chosen myself. I didn't know what lay ahead. Ethan certainly wouldn't stay silent. He would twist the story, portray me as the unstable mother, and do everything he could to get Mia back. I knew the legal battle could be long, messy, and exhausting. But I also knew, this time, I wasn't alone. I had Lauren, who messaged me the next morning after I sent just one line. "I left." She called immediately and said, "I'm here if you ever need a lawyer, an accountant, anything, just say the word." I had work waiting for me, a design project Jenna officially assigned. I had documentation proving I was stable, capable of raising my child and living independently. I had a plan, and this time, I was in control of it. As the sunrise finally broke, I opened the window. The breeze carried lavender into the sheets. I looked down at Mia and whispered to myself, "Starting today, you'll grow up in your mother's choice, not her survival." 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of a small restaurant on the outskirts of Sacramento, where Thomas and Emily hosted a post-wedding gathering for family who couldn't attend the main ceremony. No grand flower arches, no live music or expensive champagne, just white tablecloths, homemade desserts, and a warm, familiar atmosphere. I had hesitated for a long time before accepting Thomas's invitation. When he called, his voice was as sincere as it had always been. "Sophia, what you said that day, people are still talking about it. I know today might feel sensitive, but could you share a little more? Emily and I would really love to hear it." I paused. "Will Richard be there?" "He will. But Sophia, if you have something to say, say it. This is a safe space." I thought I would say no, but I remembered Martha's eyes back at the shelter. Her words still echoed in my head every morning. "We don't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes we just need to stand." And now I was standing here, again with a mic in hand, surrounded by familiar faces. Mia was at the back of the room, sleeping in Lauren's arms after a full feeding. Martha was here too, sitting in one of the last rows, nodding gently at me. a silent blessing. I took a deep breath. Thank you for giving me the chance to stand here once more. My voice still trembled slightly, but the fear was gone. Last time I spoke about seeing each other in a marriage. Today I want to talk about something else. Seeing yourself. I looked around the room and paused briefly at Richard, who stood beside his mother in a crisp shirt, arms crossed. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. I used to live in a house with every convenience, and yet I felt smaller every day. I wasn't hit, I wasn't starved, but I was worn down. By quiet cuts of words, by looks that made me feel invisible, by the sense that I only existed to babysit, to cook, to maintain appearances. Not a single sound interrupted me, even the clinking of silverware had stopped. I didn't leave because I stopped loving. I left because I realized love can't be one-sided. I used to believe that if I was patient enough, things would change. But the truth is, no one changes unless they face the consequences of their actions. I noticed Richard's shoulders tighten slightly, but he stayed still. I didn't walk away to get revenge. I walked away because I finally loved myself more than someone else's comfort, and because I want my daughter to grow up in a place where her mother is respected, not erased. A faint sigh rose from the back. I didn't know who it came from, but it felt like a ripple breaking through a wall of silence. I know some have told my story differently, that I'm unstable, selfish, that I destroyed a family, but today I stand here, calm, clear, and not defending my choice, because the truth doesn't need defending. I bowed and handed back the mic. No one clapped. But no one had to. The silence carried enough weight for everyone to understand what was real. I walked toward the back of the room, where Lauren held Mia. As I approached, she stirred, opening her eyes with that pure, innocent gaze that always undid me. I picked her up, held her close to my chest. As I turned around, I passed Richard, and for the first time in years, I didn't lower my eyes. I looked him straight in the face, and he said nothing, not a word. Because he knew, this time, I had nothing left to lose. And I had reclaimed everything that mattered. Myself and my daughter. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon sunlight spilled through the windows, warming my face. I whispered softly into Mia's ear. We've come a long way, and you know what? We've never been stronger. We returned to the shelter just as the sun dipped behind the hills, leaving a soft pink glow stretching across the sky. Mia had fallen asleep in the car, her head resting on my chest, breath steady and warm. I carried her gently inside, where the soft hallway light seemed already familiar with the footsteps of women reclaiming their lives. Martha opened the door to our room, her same patient smile on her face. Thank you for coming, for saying what needed to be said. I nodded, my words caught in my throat. There was no need to say anything, she understood. The way people who've lived through the dark recognize each other. I placed Mia into the small, familiar crib, then sat on the edge of the bed, quietly watching her curl into sleep. The past days rewound in my mind like a film. The first moment I walked into this place with trembling hands, the sleepless nights spent editing designs, and the moment I spoke my truth in front of everyone, declaring I would no longer be invisible. It felt like it happened just yesterday, yet also like it had taken a lifetime. I reached for the old notebook on the desk, the one where I'd written my first plan to leave, one step at a time. I flipped to the first page, still scrawled with early notes. Personal account, small project, USB backup, emergency number. Then I turned to the last blank page and wrote just one line. We are free. I don't know what lies ahead. My lawyer says the custody battle will be complicated. Ethan has hired an aggressive legal team and is trying to paint himself as the ideal father abandoned by a reckless wife. But this time, I'm ready. I have evidence. I have people willing to testify, Lauren, Jenna, and Martha. I have the truth. And I'm no longer afraid. A week after the reception, I officially started working part-time as a designer at Lauren's company. Remotely. The job wasn't just income. It was proof that I still had value, that I wasn't defined by how fast I changed diapers or how well I baked. I was a woman with talent, thoughts, and the right to choose. Every morning when Mia wakes up, I place her in her little chair, warm up her milk and turn on soft jazz. Then I open my laptop, read emails and adjust layouts for a public education campaign I'm designing. I do all this in a modest room with cream walls and a creaky ceiling fan. But I've never felt more complete. I chose this life, not because it's easy, but because it's true to my heart. One evening as I was changing Mia's clothes, she suddenly grabbed my hand and beamed up at me, her eyes sparkling just like the first time I held her after she was born. I pulled her into my arms, buried my face in her hair and whispered, "We've made it, baby, and I promise, I'll never abandon myself again." In that moment I felt no fear behind me. Only one thing stood as clearly as the moonlight pouring through the window. I had survived. And I had started over, not with regret, but with a free heart. No matter what the future holds, no matter how long the trial lasts, no matter what Ethan says to twist the truth, I will keep going. No more turning back, no more compromising. Because I chose the right thing, because I dared to rise. And most of all, because I remembered who I am. Sophia's story is a powerful reminder that freedom isn't just walking away from a place. It's reclaiming your worth after years of being erased. In silence and small steps she chose to rise not from rage but from love. What Sophia did wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For every woman who's been overlooked, controlled, or made to believe there's no way out. Because the truth is, there is a way out, and it's worth taking. What do you think of Sophia's journey? Did she make the right choice to leave in order to protect herself and her daughter? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow our channel for more moving stories about family and resilience.